from California, Mr. Issa, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from California.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to recognize the chairman, Mr. Rogers, for 45 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized.
I thank my friend and colleague from California. I support the amendment, believe it will help the Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committees in their ongoing investigations in the war in Afghanistan. Thank you, and I yield back.
I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from, for what purpose is the gentleman from Washington seek recognition?
I claim the time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey. Sorry, I was on the last debate. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crow.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman. I do a lot of good work with my friend from California, and we've agreed before, but I have to vehemently disagree with him on this particular amendment. It's framed as an Afghanistan oversight amendment, an issue that is very important to me, of which I've worked very hard on over the last couple of years, both before the withdrawal from Afghanistan and after the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And it lists a number of efforts and a number of data points and information and documents that it wants the government to turn over. If only somebody had thought of this before. If only we thought about doing oversight of Afghanistan before, like maybe the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, SIGAR, or maybe the Abbey Gate investigation, or maybe the thousands of documents that CENTCOM already has on its website, or maybe the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee that Foreign Affairs actually just created that I'm the ranking member of, or maybe the DOD, State Department, and CIA after-action reviews that exists, or maybe the General Accountability Office investigations, or maybe the IG investigations, or maybe the Bipartisan Afghanistan War Commission that we've supported that has 8 Democrats and 8 Republicans that many of my friends on the opposite side of the aisle won't even agree to fund now. Or maybe the 20 pieces of legislation that I and others have supported to make sure that we learn lessons and do this right. Or maybe the Afghan Allies Protection Act that I'm moving forward to do right by our SIVs. Or maybe the Afghan Adjustment Act to make sure that we're helping those Afghans that we evacuated. I could go on and on about all the efforts that I've worked on and others have worked on that I would fully support and hope that you would do the same. But this is just a political effort, right? There's all this other stuff going on that I support that are good bipartisan efforts. This is duplicative, which makes it gratuitously political, and I urge my colleagues not to support this measure. I yield back.
Does the gentleman from Washington reserve? The gentleman from Washington reserves?
I reserve. Apologize.
The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I'm afraid I wish my colleague had stayed for a little longer because I'd like to change his mind as to why I'm doing it, what I'm doing, and what the purpose would be. I've been in pretty constant contact, my office, with many of the families, more than 10 of them, of the 13 who lost their lives in the withdrawal from Bagram. Many of the, from Afghanistan, but many of the individuals, family members, have asked specific questions that have never been answered. And they continue to want to have specific questions answered, particularly and including, obviously, individuals, what we knew about them, how they came to be released, a lot of the activities that went on. Now, some of it will have to be transmitted on a classified basis, but most of it can be given to the committees of jurisdiction openly. Those families, the families of 13, and the families of all the others who have lost their lives, deserve closure. I believe that although the Special IG and lots of other organizations have done a lot of good work, much of it is not yet available to Congress and as a result not available to the families or to the American people. And for that reason, I crafted this multi-page amendment specifically and narrowly to ask for information that to a great extent has not yet been granted, which the Department of Defense has. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield myself such time as I may consume. The gentleman's amendment requires the DoD to generate a report and provide all documentation to Congress on the decision to withdraw from Afghanistan, the attack at Abbey Gate, in coordination with state, provide the number and immigration status of those evacuated from Afghanistan, and U.S. support or interference with non-governmental groups assisting with the evacuation. So there's nothing particularly narrowly crafted about this. It's very broad. And the larger problem, this is all information, as Mr. Crow indicated, that has been turned over repeatedly to multiple different commissions in multiple different entities. I do not doubt that the families still have questions, and the extent that they have questions, we should try to answer them. Those questions are not going to be answered in the documentation that the gentleman is asking for. And I know this because these documents have already been turned over, already been made available, and as the gentleman just said, the families still have questions, and I completely respect that. We should find ways to answer those questions. This amendment isn't going to do that. It is not going to answer those questions. It is simply asking for documentation that has already been provided in multiple forums. And I will grant you that it depends on the forum, but we've got the Inspector General. Mr. Crow went through the list of all the different people who have seen this and remember, including right now the Republican-led House Foreign Affairs Committee, which is not being remotely shy about pursuing this information, is leading an investigation on precisely that issue. So this is duplicative, will not answer the questions that the gentleman just raised. So I don't support this amendment. I agree with Mr. Crow that there's no apparent purpose for it. This information has been provided, and if we pass this amendment, it implies that it hasn't, that that's wrong, dishonest, and we shouldn't do it. And with that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I yield myself some continued time. I wish that the gentleman would come with, on Monday night, I'll have more than 24 of the family members for dinner after votes, and you're invited. My treat. The fact is, those unanswered questions are not because voluminous documents haven't been requested, and in some cases, money have been received. It's because when committees ask, and I have plenty of experience in oversight, when committees ask, they get told that we will provide you such information as is appropriate to your request, and we determine should be granted. That's short of when you pass a law. The weight of this amendment in this act will, in fact, have a weight of law for compliance. That is a weight of law which is higher than a committee requesting or even a committee subpoena. That is the reason that this is different. This will ensure that if someone says, look, we've already granted it all, they can either push a button and duplicate it, they can give us stacks from other reports, or in fact, they can look one more time for the information we've been asking for and be more complete, compliant with a law that will ultimately be signed by the President. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Washington is recognized.
30 seconds. The weight of law is important if the information hasn't been turned over. That's what the weight of law does, is compels them to do it. And again, I will emphasize the answers that the gentleman seeks, and I applaud you for having those conversations with the victims. I hope you do. I hope you can answer those questions. I hope somebody can. But this amendment does not advance that conversation at all. I appreciate the fact that the gentleman's had some time to talk about this very important issue. But the amendment is simply seeking information that is already provided. And as far as the opportunity to have it again, as I understand it, that subcommittee on foreign affairs, I yield myself an additional 15 seconds, is still going. They are very, very far from done. So those questions have a very obvious forum and multiple other forums in which to continue to answer those questions. Again, this amendment implies the Department of Defense is withholding something. They are not. I reserve.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I'll yield myself such time as I may consume. Let me tell a quick story. Some years ago, we subpoenaed information from the Department of Justice. The Attorney General himself, then Eric Holder, came before me, both in committee and personally, up to and including the moment in which he was held in contempt, met with us in the Speaker's office and assured us that if we would just take the 279 pages that was fully meeting all of our requests, and accept that as a complete record and be done with it, that he would give them to us. Otherwise, he would withhold them. We held him in contempt. We went to court. And many months later, Amy Berman Jackson, a federal judge, said, let me see the documents you're withholding and all of them that you're claiming the executive privilege, all of them that, in fact, are responsive to his request. We received thousands of pages that never went to Amy Berman Jackson because they had no merit. Then we received more than 10,000 more pages that did go through a review process. 279, 2,000, 10,000. The fact is, it is not new for administrations to give you some documents and not look thoroughly until there is a compelling law. I do not want to go back through the process of going to a federal judge or holding someone in contempt. This is a way to ensure that they either comply or honestly tell us they have already complied. I cannot take the word this lightly of any administration. I've been down that road before, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Then I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from Washington has 15 seconds and is recognized.
I yield the balance of that time to Mr. Crow.
Thank you. My friend from California, I will always accept an offer to meet with our families of the fallen. You know, I served in Afghanistan, as you know, and some of my friends and people that I served with made the ultimate sacrifice. But this is not the way to advance this mission and get this done. As the ranking member of the Oversight and Accountability Subcommittee, I will work with you to do it the right way.
Expired. The gentleman yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
We're not going to ask.
It is now in order to consider amendment number 62, printed in House Report